Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Aaron Stokes. Newcastle United beat Nottingham Forest 3-1 at the City Ground on Sunday in what for many is the finest performance of the season so far. Having gone behind thanks to Murillo after just 22 minutes, United had to come from behind to secure victory, but did so comfortably in the end. The second half performance from United was as near to perfect as you'll find with goals from Alexander Isak, Joelinton, and Harvey Barnes. We're going to look back on this fantastic performance and why it's more than just a win. This episode is brought to you by NORD VPN, and if you want to secure yourself against the hackers and the scammers, then this is the software for you. NordVPN offers you that protection you need on all your devices for the monthly price of a cup of coffee. And one sign-up allows you to use NordVPN on 10 devices. And why use it? Well, you'll get a notification should any of your details be compromised or your cyber security be under threat. And having got that notification a couple of weeks ago, then trust me, you'll be very grateful. We've got a special discount offer for our listeners and viewers. Head to nordvpn.com/tune to take advantage of it. You'll get an extra 4 months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. Thank you very much. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, you well?
Very well. Again, I mean, it's become the habit, isn't it? Sitting in here on a Monday talking about a good win. The times of crisis seem like a completely different era. And I'll be completely honest, I was at a wedding reception on Friday night with a lot of Newcastle fans there, and every single one of them was confident. And I was sat there thinking, you know, am I all right? Because I was not confident in the slightest, and it turns out I should have had maybe a little bit more faith.
Well, I thought we'd get at least a point, but I just want to talk about your activities on Friday night, because on Friday morning, you were feeling a lot of pain. I thought you would have just gone home and had a few paracetamol and gone straight to bed.
Yeah, well, for people who haven't been watching or listening to the episode in a couple of weeks, I've been struck down with a bad back, despite the fact I'm 28, not 58. And it just hasn't seemed to be getting better. It's on the mend. I'm telling myself it's on the mend. It's got to be. But yeah, plenty of Guinness on Friday night. Yeah, soothe the bad back.
Did you take to the dance floor? That's the question.
No, I had maybe 30 seconds of dance floor and I thought it's not for me. I need to go and find that comfy chair again.
Bending over with your hand on your back, saying not for me.
Poor Robin, having to find other people to dance with. But no, we're on the mend. We're back. Pardon the pun. We're back. We'll be fine. Give it a couple more days.
Well, I spent Sunday at Fenwick Window.
Really? I haven't seen it.
I hadn't seen Fenwick Window in a long time in person, but I took the little one out there with the missus to see it, and the little one she just loved it. Santa Claus, waving at Santa Claus, trying to high-five Santa Claus through the window. An absolute delight. There was queues to see it as well, so it's very, very popular indeed. If you haven't gone down, it's well worth a trip with I suppose not just the little ones as well, but the child within us would probably enjoy it.
I might walk past it on my way home tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
Slightly different route home.
So nice to see. That gets you in the Christmas spirit, and it certainly got me. Well, I was happy, and then I seen the result as well, and I was even happier. So what a win for Newcastle United. And like you see, I think a lot of people were a little bit wary of travelling down the City Ground. They were in great form, but Newcastle United in the end got the points and deserved probably to win by a few more goals than they did.
It's becoming a really popular ground for Newcastle, isn't it? It feels like every time they go to the City Ground now, obviously they won on penalties there earlier in the season. They had that big win there a couple of years ago when Alexander Isak scored, and Elliot Anderson obviously had that goal disallowed. They had one last year where Bruno scored. It's becoming a really happy hunting ground. But I must say, as I mentioned there, Friday night, Saturday and evening to Sunday afternoon, the confidence, and you know me, confidence usually builds for me over the week, and by the time kickoff comes, no matter whether they're playing home or away, I usually think Newcastle are going to get something. But I'll be totally honest, I didn't see them getting anything on Saturday. I thought the form Forest were in, the fact it was Newcastle on the road, I didn't expect it. But hey, really, really delighted with the way they performed and the way they got the job done.
Glad to be proved wrong, I think is what you're looking for there. Before we make a deep dive into the game, I think it's important to kind of talk about what a test of character it was for Newcastle United to come back, because I know they were decent enough in the first half, but the noise after Forest scored was absolutely deafening. I mean, you could feel the City Ground kind of rocking and shaking, even just watching it back at home. And there was definitely a sense that they could go on to win this and possibly quite comfortably. But for Newcastle to weather that and come out 3-1 winners, it shows you the character in that squad. And for me, that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when Forest go a goal ahead, they very rarely lose. I think there were 13 games unbeaten when they'd taken the lead in a game, which just goes to show you sort of the magnitude of what Newcastle did yesterday. We were obviously discussing this off air. I actually thought Newcastle were a much better team in the first half. They were unlucky to go in at the break behind, but fair play to them. You know, they came out second half, and even before they got the equaliser, you could tell that they were still well on top. They were very wary of Forest's counter-attacking presence, but you know, they're absolutely dominating. And I think there's a couple of tweets here which probably sum up not just the second half, but Newcastle's comeback in general. Now, these 3 tweets are all from Nottingham Forest fans. The first one is, how the F were Newcastle 13th before today? That was like playing against 14 players. The next Forest tweet was, Newcastle were better full stop, relentless coming forward after we went 1-0 up, just wave after wave, and we couldn't handle it. And then the final one, which I think is very, very telling, that's the first time we've been second best over a full 90 minutes all season. Absolutely bullied. That is a reality check. So Forest, who, as we say, haven't been used to losing, haven't been used to being behind this season, haven't been conceding goals, completely played off the park.
Well, that's why I think it's more than just 3 points for Newcastle United. It's a psychological thing. It's a psychological thing for Newcastle because it's a win on the road. It's winning the game by more than 1 goal, taking those chances that they created and missed in recent weeks. But when it comes to Forest, it's defeating a team who for now are around them, battling for those European spots.
Mm-hmm.
And as we say, you know, Forest had only lost once up to this point. They'd only conceded 3 goals at the City Ground. They're the only team to beat Liverpool, you know, flying high in the league. So for Newcastle United to go there and win in a manner that they did, that is a huge psychological blow potentially to Forest and what's to come for them afterwards, which of course, if they go down from here, is a benefit to Newcastle.
Well, it's just added to that fantastic form we've seen in the last week, and it sort of feels like, again, we're sat here saying, I really wish there wasn't an international break, because 14 days now till Newcastle play again against West Ham. It's not what Eddie Howe or the players would have wanted. They'll have wanted this momentum to keep going. But as you say, psychologically, what it can do for the season, we've seen so many times with this Eddie Howe team when they maybe haven't been going through a good run, and they just get that maybe surprise result that kicks them on. So I agree with you on that sense, but also, I mean, this is Andrew Musgrove we're talking about. This is the, you know, uber pessimistic guy who often comes on this podcast and tells us to keep the feet on the ground. So is that still a message to the listeners and viewers? Do we still need to keep the feet on the ground, or is this more than 3 points and Newcastle are back maybe?
No, you need to keep your feet on the ground because there's so much more work to be done. And Eddie Howe will be of that train of thoughts as well. You know, okay, you've beaten Arsenal, you've beaten him Nottingham Forest, but then if you go and lose to West Ham, you know, what have you done really? You've got to keep building on it. And you're right, the international break comes at a horrendous time for Newcastle United because they've got that momentum, and so many players who've been out of form this season have suddenly found their feet. But I think it's always good just to be a little bit cautious because things can turn. And that's just the nature of football. Forest could go on from here, having only lost twice up to this national break, and then lose the next 5 or 6, and they've gone from Champions League contenders to middle of the road. You just don't know what's going to happen. So many positives, of course. So many players looking like back at the best, but you've got to keep building on it.
Yeah, and I think there's a very good chance that Newcastle do keep building on it. And again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I know you'll shoot me straight back down. But after beating Chelsea in the Cup, Arsenal in the league, and Forest away from home, they've now got really winnable games on paper, at least. West Ham at home, you've got to be punishing West Ham, who are in a really, really poor vein. You've got to be going to Palace and getting a win and keeping them down there. Liverpool, obviously, that's maybe the outlier. But then after that, Brentford, Leicester, Brentford in the Cup, Ipswich. Now, I know it's not as simple as just saying they'll win those games, but you are looking at that run of fixtures and saying...
But we said this about some of the fixtures at the start of the season. I mean, you talk about Ipswich there. They've made light work of Spurs at the weekend. You know, the Premier League is just one of those leagues where anyone can beat anyone. And I get what you're saying on paper. Yes, they should be winning the majority of those games you've just mentioned. But I'm not going into that run of games thinking it's 9 points or whatever. It's going to be a difficult 6 weeks leading up to the new year.
And Eddie Howe will definitely be on that school of thought because he keeps making a habit, especially in the last couple of press conferences, of stressing the point that the Premier League this year is, one, the most competitive he's ever seen, and two, really unpredictable. As you say, as we saw with Ipswich beating Tottenham. Now, as someone in those tweets before mentioned, Newcastle were 12th or 13th start in the weekend. and you look at the table now, the table looks much better because they're 8th, but there's 4 points separating 3rd to 13th. I mean, that is literally anybody's guess as to who is going to sort of go into Christmas
if
around
Newcastle lose to West Ham, heaven forbid, West Ham are suddenly only 3 points off Newcastle. It's so tight, isn't it? It's in one way you celebrate that because it's exactly what you want, and you want your team to be kept on their toes because they know one slip up, even just dropping 2 points, and you could fall 4 or 5 spaces down the league. So I'm all for it because I think it will just add that motivation and that focus of Eddie Howe. It's going to be a tremendous run up to Christmas, especially for those fans who haven't got a team in the running there. But yeah, it's really, really close, and all the more reason why you've just got to keep building on it. I mean, coming into this game, I saw a few comments that I thought were really disrespectful to Forest. People saying, yes, they're flying, but Newcastle have got to be beating teams like this. But you say it on paper, yes, but they're up there because of merit. They're a very, very difficult side to beat. As we mentioned, 1 defeat before this game, 3 goals conceded at home, manager of the month, player of the month, good side, maybe punching above their weight, but there was no giving Newcastle United were going to win this game, and it was a real test. I just go back to the fact of now beating a side who are there and thereabouts, who are around them, and that's why it's more than just 3 points. Real good test of character. Good to see certain people getting on the score sheet. Good to see the performance, but so important that they've beaten a side around them, I think.
Yeah, it'll do wonders for the confidence, and you can maybe look back at those Chelsea and Arsenal wins and say, look, well, they had the luxury of being at home where they always perform, slightly better than they do on the road. So as you say, psychologically, to go to a ground like the City Ground, even though they've had, as we said, fantastic luck there in the last couple of years, to go there and win so convincingly. I mean, it was the manner of the performance. They didn't scrape over the line. They could have won 4, 5 or 6-1 on another day.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because the excuses were there. Once that goal goes in, that Murillo scores, there was already a sense of injustice.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have been even a free kick because it came from the corner that was not. But before that, obviously, you had the elbow, and then you've got the interval just before the half-time whistle goes. You've got Sean Longstaff getting wiped out by Ryan Yates, who somehow gets to the interval without being sent off. It would have been all booked. It would have been very easy after that goal goes in from Murillo to crumble and say, we were outdone because of a dodgy performance by the referee, but they didn't. And again, that's a show of character, a sign of character within the squad.
And that's something we haven't seen from Newcastle this season, because how many times we've said, oh, well, you know what, that 30, 35, 40-minute period was probably the best of the season, but Newcastle were really struggling to back that up. Happened against Brighton at home. It's happened at times earlier in the campaign as well. It's good to see that the entire 90 minutes this weekend, they were the better team. They were the deserved winners. And they played some really, really lovely football in the process.
They certainly did. Particularly that third goal that Harvey Barnes scored is something that I've watched time and time again. Andy in the comments live on Facebook says a good win against a side who were full of confidence, could have scored more. We've got Ian singing along saying he's Brazilian. He only cost 40 million. We've got a Facebook user, an anonymous user says, I thought the referee was disgraceful yesterday how he didn't give a card for Yates on poor Tino. Then Byrne gets a yellow card, which rules him out for the West Ham game, and also that challenge on Longstaff. So, yeah, as many people are or not, they're not fans of the referee. Happy birthday to Ian, who says it says birthday today. And loads of people in the comments talking about how impressed they are with Sunday's performance against Nottingham Forest. Any questions, pop them in to the comments and we will get through them. As to kind of phrase says there, if Gordon scored the penalty at Everton, we would have been third. We are almost definitely back. We'll get onto that in a moment. But I do just want to point out there, and you know me, and I'm not one to bring up the predictions that I've made, especially when they've come up. I'm not one to talk about Jacob Murphy and Nando's and what have you, but I did say it would click. I did say after the Everton game and the Brighton game, despite the performance, despite the results, that there was enough in the performances that the wins would come. It was all about just taking the chances, and here we are.
Well, I don't think I disagreed with you there. So
many people did.
Many
people said I was being overly positive, but hey, I saw enough, and I felt Eddie Howe would turn it around, and he has done. How important is it that they have started to take these chances? And I know people will say, well, of course it is. That's how you win games. Yes, I get that point. What I mean is, it's, again, psychologically just really important that they're not just taking the chances, but also winning by more than one goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can't be a false dawn, as we've said. You know, we've been here already this season where they were playing really well and maybe not getting the results, or they were getting the results but not playing well. We've had 3 games now where they've done both. The performances have been fantastic, home and away, but they've also been getting the results to match. Now, as we say, they've been handed, you know, quite a good run on paper in the next month, a real chance to kick on before Christmas and really, you know, stamp their name down. And as some of these teams that we've mentioned start to fall away and drop away from the top 4, Newcastle need to make sure that they're absolutely there. Now, as we say, it's not as easy as that. There's definitely questions for Eddie Howe to answer in terms of the team, because, you know, the last couple of weeks, it's been at the forefront of people's minds. It's been the big debate and topic as to what he does with that team. There's still questions for him to answer with that team. And, you know, does he know his best team? I'm not sure. A lot of people will point to that team yesterday being the best, but I think people would probably been saying the exact same thing when they beat Chelsea or when they beat Arsenal. So, positive dilemmas from the half, but as we say, we need to make sure that this is the start of a really good, consistent run, which Eddie Howe has proven he can put together in the last couple of seasons.
Oh, certainly so. Another goal for Alexander Isak, 4 in 4. And what I loved yesterday about his performance was the way that he was dropping deep to getting the ball, laying it off, and then continuing his run in the direction of the opposition goal. He was so important yesterday. Obviously, he gets that equaliser, but it was just his all-round play, whether he's on the edge of the box, one-touch and pass, or whether, like I say, he's dropping deep and then allowing the wingers and maybe someone like Joe Willock to run on. And we saw, actually, just before Tino Livramento took one right in the face, we saw Willock actually running in to the box. He was the first man forward. And Isak was started that passage of play. So key yesterday, and obviously gets the goal, but another really good performance from him.
Yeah, well, as you've just touched on there, that Livramento moment, there's probably 4 moments you can pick out to show the sort of duality of Isak's performance. One, you've got the goal, really good poacher's finish, you know, from 6 yards out, gives Sells no chance. Nearly doubled the lead soon after with that volley where he peels away from the defender, he starts to move and he finishes it. And then, as you said, you've got the Livramento elbow moment where he's actually playing as a winger, swings in a really good cross for Willock. And then you've got, as you say, where he's dropping really deep for that second goal. He picks it up from Tonali, you know, pretty much inside his own centre circle. Nice ball out, Joelinton, and he does the rest. So that just goes to show you those 4 sort of flashpoints of the game. He's involved in all of them, but in different reasons. It was a really complete performance from him.
And what we saw yesterday, not just with Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon, but Joelinton and Anthony Gordon as well, were alternating in their positions. It's sometimes you had Gordon playing centrally and Isak out wide, then you had Gordon and Joelinton switching. Now, that's always kind of been the case when everybody's been fit and playing, but how important is that confidence element for that to work? You know, because we've seen it throughout the season where they have switched and it's maybe not, well, it hasn't worked, it hasn't clicked, but yesterday we've seen it and it seemed to work. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it really did work. Every time they tried it yesterday, it came off. Joe Willock was a massive part of that. Joelinton was a massive part of that. I mean, Willock in the first half, his efforts will probably go unnoticed because they went 1 down in the break. But I thought Joe Willock was the best player on that pitch in the opening 45 minutes. And then in the second half, you switched Joelinton from left to right permanently after trying it for like the last 5-10 minutes of the second half. And he did the exact same, whether he was playing centrally, whether he was out wide, whether he was running at goal, whether he was defending. Eddie Howe loves these players, and how many times have we spoken it predominantly around a transfer debate where we say Eddie Howe wants players that can play in 3 or 4 positions. He's got that now in a lot of those positions. The 4 players you've just mentioned can all sort of take turns in wherever they really want to go.
Gordon's the really interesting one because as good as he was against Arsenal playing predominantly on that right, against Forest, I mean, a lot of players probably were a little bit absent in the first half, but he only seemed to come to life after being switched to the left. So that presents Eddie Howe with a bit of an issue because, again, we're seeing probably 1 in, 5-6 performances when he's on the right and it's working, but he's clearly better on the left. But what does Eddie Howe do? Because obviously he's trying to alternate, he's trying to get the better of the opposition defence by alternating and have different players at different times, but it only seems to get the best out of Gordon when he is at home on the left. But it's difficult because Eddie Howe doesn't seem to want to keep him there permanently.
I think, you know, if you cast your mind back to last weekend, or even last week when we sat doing this pod, we'll have been sitting here saying, well, and a lot of people listening and a lot of people in the comments will have been saying, okay, this is it going forward now. Gordon on the right, Joelinton on the left, Isak going forward. He's found his best front 3 for now. I suspect a lot of people watching this and listening to this now will say, actually, no, we've changed our mind, and actually it should be Joelinton on the right, Gordon on the left, and Isak through the middle. We might be sat here after West Ham going, oh, well, you know what, actually, Joe Willock had a really good game at left wing because Gordon was injured. You know, we don't know the severity of that at the minute. It can change, and Eddie Howe's got that sort of, those options now where he probably doesn't need to be set in stone. Now, I actually loved what they did in the second half. Eddie Howe clearly thinks Joelinton can play right wing. He's played there throughout the last 3 games for prolonged periods of the game, and we know Gordon's better on the left. Is that the way to go? I think a lot of people will say yes.
Well, we did ask before we came into the studio the question which follows: does Joelinton's form on the wing mean the need for a right winger is less important this January? For what it's worth, I think Newcastle still need to go out and sign a right winger. Hello, Brian and Birmo. Aaron, for what it's worth?
I completely agree with you. I think Joelinton or Gordon on the right is a perfectly good stopgap for the next 2 months. And then in January, you go out and buy a right winger. It's not the answer long term, but the last 2 or 3 games, it has worked.
It gets
in the short term. It gets you to January.
But I also feel like I'm going to contradict myself here, because I was thinking after I posted it, I went for a little bit of a walk before we came in. I was thinking, actually, you know, had Joelinton played on the right for a few more games and he scored 5, 6, 7 goals, then that's maybe the time to ask the question. You mentioned at the start, you know, Andrew, you're still going to be, you know, on the side of caution. I am, because Joelinton's had 2 decent games out on the flank, but he could go on and have a stinker from here on until Christmas. You just don't know. So it's all about consistency, isn't it? That's the important thing. But it's fair to say that not many people do believe that Joelinton is the long-term answer to the right wing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at your screen there and I can see a lot of absolutely not, no, it takes one injury. So maybe we have asked the question 6 weeks too early. Maybe we should have asked it in a month's time when Joelinton's had 3, 4, 5
it's just
games
because he was so impressive on that flank. But again, it's about not getting ahead of ourselves. We've got Rob saying, no, we've had this before when Miggy had a purple patch or Murphy had a good pre-season. Regardless of what we have at the club, that position has not been upgraded post-takeover and needs doing and doing properly. Ryan says, absolutely not. Eddie's putting square pegs in round holes to try and get the best out of the team, and it's currently working. We still need a top-quality right winger. We also need a striker to replace Wilson. We've got NW Mag saying it takes 1 injury, so no, not for me. Plus, if we want to win things, we have to look for players to improve. Joelinton is a rare type of player, but many others can be improved on, in my opinion. And Neil says, as well as Joelinton has done, the squad still needs a proper right-sided winger. Almiron is a busted flush, and Murphy is what he is. The squad needs to be improved. Bradley says we still need a right winger, a couple of injuries, and we are back to square one. John says we definitely still need one. He would go after Mbermo. Pete says no, Joe's form does not change the priority. Scratchy says no, we need a classy right winger. Sell Miggy and Murphy. So yeah, it's fair to say the majority of people, if not all, are saying a right winger is needed. Still Brian Mbermo for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
What about Anthony Elanga yesterday? He made some strange decisions that I thought, you know, last season and the start of this season, from what I've seen, he's been very impressive. But Match of the Day highlighted this really well in the analysis of why Chris Wood just basically was so absent through the entirety of the game. And there was 2 examples when Elanga was through and he makes the wrong decision. Chris Wood is running down on the left. Elanga's coming over from the right.
Really well, Henry.
And Elanga just keeps the ball instead of playing through Chris Wood. And there was another example as well. And he seemed to be making the wrong decision. So, you know, if that was an audition for maybe move to Newcastle, maybe it didn't go as well. Just 1 game. Is it still between Mbermo and Elanga for you, or has Semenyo come into the picture?
No, I think just focusing on Elanga's performance yesterday, I get the point. He didn't have the best game. That Chris Wood chance, I actually thought Newcastle were in real trouble when Forest countered like that, and he should have played him in. But then you look at and think, well, he set up we won the free kick for the goal. He was really direct. He beat Willock down the byline. I don't think you would have seen Miguel Almiron taking the ball past his man on his right foot like that. And then he whips in the cross for the goal. So, look, he had an okay game. I don't think he set the world alight. He didn't stand out, but it was hard for any Forest player really to stand out. I don't think if it's a straight shootout between Elanga and Mbermo, I don't think you find anybody who says Elanga's the answer. I think Brian Mbermo for the money would be the man.
Yeah, me too. It'll be interesting to see if Newcastle follow up their interest in January on Brian Mbermo, who had a uncharacteristically quiet game against Bournemouth over the weekend. He did get an assist, but it was who was it? The man that you think about bringing your fantasy team? Wissa got the double.
Wissa looks very good.
And it's interesting as well. I mean, we digress a little bit, but I was looking at the history of Wissa, and he came from Lorient. He had one season in Ligue 1, and in the season before that, he was in the second league of the French system. But he cost them £10 million, and you look at like Semenyo and his rise, and Burn was an excellent example as well. You know, where are Newcastle United in the stage when it comes to transfers? Are they at a stage where they want to buy Semenyo, but after he's been to, say, Bournemouth, or do you think they should be looking at a Semenyo who was at Bristol before and Gamble with a 10 million bid there? Like, or can they do a bit of both?
I think they can do a bit of both. I mean, I think when you look at teams like Brentford and Bournemouth and Brighton, all the Bees, they have these really complex, data-driven ways of scouting players. And Graham Potter was speaking really eloquently yesterday on Super Sunday after Chelsea's game. They will have streams of data where they can go to these foreign obscure leagues and sign these type of players that have maybe gone under the radar. Dan Ashworth, was brilliant at it at Brighton. We all knew his track record before Newcastle. Now, I think Paul Mitchell will bring a bit of that. He's got vast experience and vast contacts from working for Red Bull Group, for Monaco. So he will definitely be able to find these gems. But for where Newcastle want to be at the stage where you're thinking, we're probably not that far off the Champions League with this squad. We've got money to spend because we didn't spend it in the summer. I think if you're asking me, do you want to go out and try find the next Mbeumo for 10 million, or you go out and sign maybe the Mbeumo of now for 50? I don't think there's any debate. It would be the 50 million option just to get somebody who's been there and done it. And then maybe you bring somebody in behind Mbeumo. I mean, even, Salia, who they've gone on. I mean, I know it's not the exact same, but they've gone to Dynamo Tbilisi in Georgia and signed the best player in that league. He's 17 years old. Clearly with the thinking that him in a couple of years' time will be, a Premier League standard player. So there's both ways of doing it.
I guess because the question is how quickly they can find their feet in the Premier League. If you're going down to the Championship and picking someone up who's impressed there, not everyone's going to be maybe Jared Bowen or something. It's taken Semenyo a season to find his feet, but he's looked excellent, hasn't he, this season? He looks a real talent, and Bruno didn't necessarily hit the ground running when he came up from the Championship with Brentford. So it does take time, and of course Newcastle want impact players now to push on. But also what happens after Isak's goal on Sunday, of course, Newcastle United scoring from a corner. We should get them, what do you call them? Party tube streams. I don't know where they are. We could celebrate that 63rd attempt of a corner to get a goal from a corner this season, which is far too many corners before the score. But finally, they've got one. Chris Wood with the assist. But we had, naturally and rather ignorantly, pundits have begun pushing Alexander Isak towards Arsenal. It just baffles me how they do this without realising the potential that Newcastle United have. I mean, firstly, Isak to Arsenal, you can start the bidding at £150 million, in my view. Secondly, United, I think, and you just mentioned it there, Aaron, are probably only 2 or 3 signings away from becoming an established top 4 side. The gap to Arsenal isn't that big. It's still sizable, don't get me wrong, but it's not that big that Arsenal can just come knocking and expect to buy up one of Newcastle's best players. It's a total lack of respect, I think, to Newcastle, that this conversation always happens without the question of, well, could he not achieve all that at Newcastle? Because, there's a lot of hard work to be done, but he certainly can in the years to come. I mean, there's no reason why they can't be in the Champions League again next season.
But I think that's the big thing. If Newcastle were in Europe this season, I don't think you'd be hearing half the conversations about Alexander Isak and potential exits. And I think if they don't make Europe again at the end of this season, you're going to hear the exact same conversations about Isak, about Gordon, about Bruno, about Sven Botman, about Tonali. All these players that Newcastle will struggle to keep a hold of if they're not back in Europe. So we were debating pre-show whether it was arrogant or ignorant for all these.
I think it's a bit of both.
I think it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Actually, Paul Merson's got his loyalties to.
He's got his Arsenal hat on, hasn't he?
And I can understand that, because then people will be sitting here saying, "Well, you're talking about Mbeumo and he's just going to arrive at Newcastle United." And I get that, but maybe the gap is a little bit bigger between Brentford and Newcastle, the size of the club and whatever. No disrespect, because I think Brentford are a tremendous Premier League side, really impressed with what they're doing, but it's a little bit different, I think. But yeah, Isak involved in the goal that Forest scored thanks to Murillo. Wasn't the best bit of defending, was it?
No, it wasn't. He drops off for 2 or 3 yards, doesn't he? Which
I think
can't
he
really
might
understand.
be getting a bit of a rollicking for that,
Do you
I
reckon?
think. Because that's something that would have worked on, that zonal marking. Yes, Isak is paid to score the goals, but, he's also there for a reason. He's not just rocked up and gone, all right, where should I start?
Yeah.
They would have worked on that throughout the week because they know Nottingham Forest are so good at set pieces. And for everyone else just to keep in line, and then he drops back, opens the space.
Yeah.
Murillo ahead of Joelinton in the back
too
of the
easily
net.
ahead of Joelinton. Yeah, really, really poor and a very cheap goal to concede.
But to be fair, came from a free kick that came from a corner that shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Pope saving from Yates and the ball hitting off Yates for a goal kick, but a corner is given. Another example of a shocking decision from referee Anthony Taylor involving Mr. Yates. As we mentioned, elbow on Livramento. Dan Burn then gets booked in the aftermath, will miss West Ham. And then Yates with a stud-out challenge on Longstaff. Taylor in a good position for both, and VAR checking both, and yet nothing gets done.
You sort of touched on it before. When it was half-time and Newcastle were behind, I was just sat there thinking, it's going to be one of those days. Newcastle are going to lose this game. We're going to be sat talking about Anthony Taylor for the next 2 weeks before West Ham, but thankfully that's not the case. But saying that, it was nothing short of an absolute disaster of a first half performance from him. Really, really poor from somebody who was meant to be one of the best English referees around. I mean,
I think he is. He's one of the best referees in the league. I just don't understand what he was doing, because I actually had to double check that the screenshots I saw of the Longstaff incident that it wasn't fake, because he's literally looking at it.
You can take the still images out of context sometimes with refereeing decisions, but the images still yesterday look just as bad as the videos of them.
I thought you were going to say it looks bad as that Hidara one against Wigan.
No, well, I mean, maybe still, but it wasn't. But on the Sean Longstaff one, Sean Longstaff's got to be nastier there. Sean Longstaff plays on, carries the ball forward, and the advantage is played. If he goes down there, holding his thigh or his knee, either the referee gets involved or at the very least VAR gets involved, and that happens. Because he plays on, I think he does Ryan Yates a massive favour. The Livramento one, I mean, look, Livramento forced the ground. He does the exact opposite of Sean Longstaff, and rightly so. He's just had his lip burst. And Anthony Taylor, again, is 5 yards away. Clear vision of it. No one else thinking. And he doesn't make it.
It goes back to the point about VAR. What is it there for? Like, it's not as if he's given a yellow card, so it's kind of been dealt with. He doesn't get a yellow card for either incident. And like you said, Dan Burns now being sacrificed. I just don't understand. What is VAR doing? What are they looking at?
Well, there was another one in the first half as well, where Joe Willock goes to ground in the penalty area under a challenge from Elanga. Now, I've only seen 1 or 2 replays of it, but I think that on another day, that would be given. That was checked. It wasn't given. If Newcastle hadn't won that game, you could have felt really, really frustrated. I mean, Ryan Yates finally got booked in the 65th or the 66th minute, and it was his fourth foul. And I mean, any one of those in the first half, I think on that day could probably have been given as a red.
And you know what, as well, it's a bigger point, but I think there needs to be some retrospective action, not just to do with the Yates, but in general, the rules need to be changed. Where even if the player's been booked, if he wasn't booked for. Well, the thing is, though, he wasn't booked for them incidents, so surely retrospective action can still happen. It used to happen back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it doesn't. And also they should change the rules where Dan Burns' yellow card has got to be seen in context of what just happened. They should go back and say, well, actually, Tino Livermento's had his head taken off, so we're going to issue a retrospective 3-game ban on Yates, and then we're going to remove that yellow card off Dan Burn. And this isn't just Newcastle United, and this is a thing I'd love to see rolled out across the entire league, because now Newcastle United are missing a player in a very important game after the international break because of a mistake by the referee. It just makes absolutely zero sense, and it's something that the FA definitely look at. If VAR isn't going to do what it's being brought in to do, then they need to make sure that what happens during the week at the FA is players get punished when VAR's missed it. And we shouldn't be sitting there talking about that, because, to be quite honest, VAR shouldn't miss it. But anyway, Newcastle go on to win the game. Burn having a chance in the first half, good save. Bruno too, and Bruno had the first real chance of the second half with the outside of his right foot, an absolute glorious effort from Bruno. If that had gone in, we would have been talking about that goal for many, many months to come. And what I took away from Bruno's performance on Sunday is the confidence to shoot on goal. He's only had 14 efforts on goal this season. I know he's playing a little bit deeper than maybe he would like, but he hasn't scored. I just felt against Forest, he seemed to find that confidence, which has been missing perhaps throughout the entirety of the team. And that's why we saw such a good performance and a good win. But I want to see him have just that confidence to shoot on goal, because for Newcastle to go to the next level, we need whoever's playing that midfield three to start adding goals to their game. And look, he didn't get the goal on Sunday, but he came damn close. I just want to see him do it more and start adding to his tally.
Yeah, he was in the mood yesterday. It was a really, really good performance. It was an assured performance, not just at, sort of in front of Forest's goal. Goes close with his weak foot, as you say. The confidence to take that shot on in the first half forces a good save from Sells. And I mean, I think there would have been some pandemonium in the away end had he scored that outside the foot goal. Would have been contender for goal of the season. So, yeah, good to see. Look, it was a really good performance from Bruno. He was in the mood yesterday, and when he's in the mood like that, it's very, very hard to play against him.
Certainly is. Would you like a quick little bit of trivia while we're talking about shots on goal?
Go on, then.
So I've got the top 10 list here of players this season who have had the shots on goal.
Newcastle players?
No, across the league.
Okay.
So do you want? Well, there's 10 of them, but it only goes down to 8 because a lot of players have got the same amount of shots on goal. So I'll start you off, Erling Haaland, with 55 shots on goal. Do you want to take a pot of who's second? Bournemouth.
We've
mentioned him a few times.
Semenyo,
47. Crystal Palace midfielder next.
Eze.
Yeah, and then you've got a Chelsea winger slash man who likes to roam everywhere.
Palmer.
Yeah, and then you've got Man United captain
Bruno.
Yeah, and then you've got a Tottenham Hotspur winger who played for Forest.
Brennan Johnson.
Then you've got a Liverpool legend who's new in the, I didn't even need to give you the clue there. Then you've got a man who I'm going to talk about later who I would love Newcastle United to sign.
From
Wolves.
Cunha.
And then you've got Man United winger, Argentinian.
Garnacho.
That's the one. And then you've got a Chelsea winger who was linked to Newcastle in the summer.
Madueke.
So just to go through
the list, there's a lot of players I wouldn't have thought on
you've got
that list.
Haaland on 55, but if you look at players who are playing more centrally, perhaps, you've got Cunha 31 shots. You've got Eze at Palace 37 shots. So you compare that to Bruno on 14. Again, it's all about position and what have you. But I think Newcastle United do need the midfield just to start taking the initiative a little bit more. But then saying that, Alexander Isak, I know he's missed a few games, he tops it with 26 for Newcastle United. So, they are maybe a little bit shot shy, but great to see Bruno having the confidence to take a shot on goal, and hopefully the goals will come. One man who did add to his tally, Aaron, is Joelinton, getting the second with a wonderful curling effort with his left foot. Hall wins the ball, feeds Bruno, who shows real strength to hold off the Forest player. Tonali picks the ball up, gives it to Joelinton, who switches it onto his left. Sells Alanga to fire home. An absolutely tremendous goal.
Yeah, fantastic to see, as you've just touched on, the confidence from him to take the shot, but also from him to score a goal like that with his weak foot. Absolutely fantastic. He got the goal that he deserved for what I believe, and I think many would agree, was a man of the match performance from him. And there's a quote from Eddie Howe that he came out last night. He said, "Joelinton is like gold dust because wherever you put him, he's going to do a good job." Imagine if someone had said that a couple of years ago when he was struggling to make it as a number 9. But he's right. I mean, look, in the last couple of weeks, and it's not the first time we've touched on it, he's played left wing. That's where he started yesterday. He's played centre midfield. He was at times against Arsenal playing as left wing back. He spent the majority of yesterday at right wing. He was mocking Mudryk at right wing back just a couple of weeks ago. Eddie Howe is right that he's really, really impressing wherever he's been put. And we sort of alluded to it already, but I think at least till January, it looks like he might be the man to maybe take over from Miggy or Almiron, and even Harvey Barnes as that third choice attacker. I think
it's the versatility that he brings, isn't it? And I think what's going to happen as we go forward, it's all about the teams Newcastle United are playing. And anyhow, mentioned that after the press conference against Arsenal, where he was asked about the midfield three, and he kind of said, well, we have to look at the opposition, and that's what we're going to see, because I think against the bigger sides, the more dominating sides like Man City, and as we saw it in James's part, you're going to have probably Joelinton dropping in that midfield, then playing that hybrid role, whereas against teams like Nottingham Forest, where we'd have a bit more of the ball, probably are going to see him on the flank, but he's comfortable in most positions. But it's funny, isn't it? Because last season, he was arguably player of the season. He picks up that injury and obviously that Champions League season as well. But that was kind of done in that midfield in the centre where he was just colossal. He was the tank. You had players running scared. He was the one that stopped the interceptions. But he's not that good when he gets the ball on the edge of his own box. He's not that quick with it. But it just shows how fickle football is, because we've gone from describing Joelinton to this midfield powerhouse, Patrick Vieira-esque, and now we're all singing his praises on the right. What we're going to be doing in a month's time. He might finally find his form at centre forward.
I'm waiting for Tino Livramento to pick up an injury and Joelinton to play
right
back for the next 3 weeks. No, look, he aside from his goal, I mean, his goal gets the credit, and that's the thing everyone's going to be talking about yesterday, and rightly so, but there was a moment or a couple of moments in the first half where Forest threatened to counter down Newcastle's right, and Lewis Hall and Joelinton both were so good at just getting the ball back so quickly. And it just goes again to talk about that versatility that he's got. Defensively, his game's improved massively, as we've seen, certainly in the last couple of weeks, definitely against Arsenal in the first half yesterday. Now, look, I'm not expecting him to start adding loads of goals from his game. It's not usually his type of thing, but everybody always talks about how Eddie Howe's improved Joelinton because he's a midfielder, but actually he's 10 times the attacker he was than when he first signed, even if he doesn't play there all the time. So he was man of the match for me yesterday. He got the Chronicles player ratings man of the match. I suspect quite a lot of people in the comments will be agreeing that he was the standout yesterday.
Where is his best position? Does it come down, as I say, to who they're playing?
It depends on the game. I mean, I do like him left-sided centre midfield. If I had to choose one, but I think he's more than capable of playing on the wing as well.
Is that answer to that question also dependent on how good the midfield three are playing? Because again, we saw Tonali come off the bench and impact the game, had a role in 2 of the goals. But Sean Longstaff, I mean, the stats here, Sean Longstaff, 4 tackles, so he ranks first out of Newcastle United players when it comes to tackles. 88% pass success rate, 42 out of 48, so he ranks 4th. 7 out of 10 duels, ranks 2nd. He won 5 out of 7 ground duels. He was, again, really, really good on Sunday. And I know what often happens in these moments is when someone like Tonali gets introduced, and look, we're not doubting the ability of him, and he has an impact like he did by having a role in 2 of the goals, people automatically go, well, you've got to get him in. You've got to get him in somehow. It's not as black and white as that, because Sean Longstaff seems to be the key. He seems to be the balance to that side.
And as you say there, I mean, the stats like that can sometimes be misleading, but yesterday Sean Longstaff had a really steady, solid game. He kept the ball well. He did the, sort of the easy stuff well. And how many people have you seen talking about Sean Longstaff in the last 24 hours? None. You've seen them talking a lot about Bruno and Joelinton. We've just spent 10, 15 minutes talking about every single player in that team, apart from Sean Longstaff. It isn't as easy. I mean, there's a stat that has just coincidentally came up on my Twitter here, which I don't know if it's right, but it might be. Joelinton, Willock, Longstaff and Bruno have started together 14 times and Newcastle have never lost.
And that's what I mean. It's not as simple as saying you've got to get this player in, you've got to find a way to get him into the starting 11, because it's not how it works.
And look at, I mean, the results under a microscope when it's been Tonali, Joelinton and Bruno this season haven't been good. You can point back to the Man City game, which I loved watching the 3 of them in, but they weren't picking up wins. Whereas when Sean Longstaff's played, I know it's not as simple as that, but when he's played this season, they've had really good results. And he was crucial yesterday with and without the ball, as he often is.
Yep. We've got the 3rd goal coming from Harvey Barnes. Great goal again. It starts with him on the edge of his own box. United then hit Forest on the counter. Tonali feeds Barnes down the left, who shoots. Now, Matt Sells, former Newcastle United goalkeeper, will be very disappointed that goes in at his near post. But for Harvey Barnes to score from there, because from the angle where the camera is, you think he's never going to get a shot on target here, because he looks like he's so far out wide, so in a really difficult angle, puts it in the back of the net. And it was just flowing. It was just wonderful, flowing, counter-attacking football. A goal, like I say, which I've watched several times. A beautiful goal.
Well, Forest spent most of yesterday trying to, punish Newcastle on the counter. There was a lot of times where Morgan Gibbs-White found himself in acres of space to try and launch that counter-attack with the likes of Hudson-Odoi, Jota when he came on, trying to sort of capitalise on that. Newcastle's best 2 moves of the game were counter-attacks that ended in goals. Now, There was 12 seconds between Harvey Barnes flicking the ball around the corner to Bruno, I think it was, to scoring at the other end. 12 seconds, Newcastle moved the ball from one end to the other. Tonali, as you said, had a role in both of them. For the second one where Joelinton scores, you could have actually had a go at Tonali at first for not playing Barnes or Gordon in down the left. I think it was Gordon. But he got it spot on the second time when he plays Barnes in. And Barnes, as you say, does all he can with a finish. Very, very good.
Go on, there's something coming.
Look, I don't want to take the shine off Barnes' goal and the performance, but there will be debates as to, like you just said with Tonali. You've got to find a way to get him in this team. He cost 40 million. He's brilliant.
I don't think
I don't think you do. I don't think he's earned a starting role in this team this season. He started the season in such good form, and then he got given a chance in the first team. He didn't take it. You know, you think about that Wimbledon game, he was really poor. You think about the Chelsea game, he was really poor. And it's working at the minute. And Harvey Barnes, I hate to say it, looks 10 times the player off the bench when the game is stretched than he does when he's starting, and that's just the truth of it.
No, I totally agree with you. I think it's more than just goals and assists. You need that tracking back, and of course that goal comes from him helping out defensively. But you saw Gordon really putting in a shift, and I think what that goal does, like what the rule that Tonali had, it just puts them into the international break in really good spirits, because when you're not getting in the team, and then if you're coming off the bench and you're not involved, you're not scoring a goal, you're not assisting, that will just add to your mood, and you might become a sulk, you might be disruptive. But actually, being involved as those two will be absolutely fantastic news for them. It'll put them in high spirits going into the national break, and it just will be welcomed by Eddie Howe that he's got two players who are stars on the bench, coming off the bench with the right attitude and helping Newcastle win a game.
Yeah, absolutely. They need those players from the start and from the bench, and I think as long as Harvey Barnes keeps his head down, he will get the opportunities this season. Do you want to hear some quotes from him after the game yesterday? He told reporters at the City Ground, "I want to play every game from the beginning. When you're not playing, I'm always going to be disappointed, but I always believe I'm somebody who is going to use that in the right way. And when I do come on the pitch, I'll help the team and show them what I can do. I did that at Forest, and it is what I'll always try to do. But of course, I am a player who feels like I should be starting games, and I have a lot to give the team." Well, sounds like a man who wants to win his place back, but he's got a real fight in his hands. What good
teams have those in a competition. The kind of phrase in the comments says Longstaff did have another good game. It's a tried and tested formula that the team naturally understands. Over time, our default team will most likely have Tonali in it somewhere. Let us know in the comments what you think about Sean Longstaff. Ian says Sean does the donkey work. He just gets on with it despite all the abuse that he gets. Niall says he could say due to Miggy and Murphy not playing, we are a better team to counter. Interesting. Let us know in the comments what you think about Newcastle's performance against Nottingham Forest, and any takeaways that you had. Chris Wood, Elliot Anderson, it was all about those two, wasn't it? I mean, Chris Wood won Player of the Month. He had one touch in the opposition area, one touch, and that was largely down to the defensive work of Fabian Schär and Dan Burn. More Dan Burn than Fabian Schär, and Dan Burn was absolutely colossal. He made 6 clearances. He won 7 out of 8 aerial duels. Chris Wood won 2 out of 8.
He cut a really frustrated figure, Chris Wood. You could tell he was really struggling with the lack of service to him, as we've already touched on. That Elanga chance pretty much summed it up. He made a fantastic run. He peeled away from Fabian Schär, and he just didn't get the ball played to him. Dan Burn yesterday, I thought, was absolutely immense. That booking aside, he had a pretty much faultless game, as he has all season. Let's be honest, he's very rarely put a foot wrong. Stamford Bridge aside, so another really assured performance. And Newcastle are really going to miss him against West Ham. Looks like it'll be Schär and Lloyd Kelly. Yeah,
I mean, good opportunity for Lloyd Kelly to stake a claim. We all thought he would probably start against Arsenal, but Dan Burn did, and then a great performance, as we said, against Nottingham Forest for Dan Burn. But good to see that Lloyd Kelly will get his chance, even though I wish it hadn't come in these circumstances. We've got a lot of people talking about Jamie Carragher's comment. I'm guessing afterwards or during, was he co-commentator?
Yeah, he was co-commentator.
Newcastle just being an 8th side club, which I totally don't agree with. Callum says Alanga is awful. We shouldn't be going anywhere near him. Let us know in the comments what you think about that. We have to talk about Lewis Hall. We seem to talk about Lewis Hall every single week.
I love talking about Lewis Hall, so that's fine.
Absolutely brilliant. First off, England cap.
Yeah, really good to see that. I mean, if he hadn't got a call up last week, then I don't know when he ever would. He's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, man of the match at Arsenal, October Player of the Month for Newcastle, in-house. Again, really assured yesterday, and he's just building on that form. And we were talking about this, weren't we, last week, about whether he'll play. I think he could generally play both games.
I do as well. 104 touches, which ranks first by 35 out of 9 aerial duels, ranks second, 5 interceptions. And there was a moment when he just wrestles Alanga off the ball totally fairly to get the ball. And Newcastle United go down the other end. Is it the Dan Burn effort in the first half, which starts from him?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff you want. He just looks like he's stronger. He looks bigger. He looks more comfortable within himself. Just every single week, he just looks better and better and better.
Yeah, really assured performance against a really tricky opposition in a team like Forest, who have got such pacey wingers, whether it's Hudson-Odoi, whether it's Anson off the bench, whether it's Jota, whether it's Morgan Gibbs-White drifting out wide. As I said, there was a couple of moments in the first half where he just intercepted the ball so well, so easily, and he started Newcastle on another wave of attacks. He just looks like he's getting better and better.
We've got Niall saying Hall was amazing again. So lucky to have this kid. Les says, I'm with you, Ian. Sean Longstaff provides balance on and off the ball. Excellent option for specific games. Now, interestingly, yesterday, Newcastle United had to have more of the ball. First half, 60% possession. Second half, it was 52% possession, because we know Forest are just a counter-attacking side, but we know Newcastle United are better on the transition as well. So it was always going to be really interesting, because Forest were always going to try and make Newcastle have more of the ball. And as we know, Newcastle don't look comfortable on it. Would you say they look comfortable yesterday, having to have the majority of possession?
Yeah, I don't think there was a moment in the game where I thought Newcastle were really struggling to break Forest down. Even in the first half, when they went in 1-0 down, I thought they'd had the lion's share of the chances. They tested Matt Sells. They weren't looking like they were struggling to break down a team who were clearly trying to play counter-attacking football. Look, that isn't always the case. Newcastle of old, and certainly in the last couple of months, have struggled against teams like that. They struggled at Brighton. They struggled at Everton when they had more possession. But I thought they were much better with the ball on Sunday.
It's interesting, though, because when Newcastle are a counter-attacking side, they also press really high and force teams into mistakes. But Forest don't do that. And I think that was a bit of a mistake maybe by Noonan, because if you put Fabian Schär or if you put Dan Burn under a little bit of pressure, if you put Nick Pope under a little bit of pressure, that can often help you out. But thankfully they didn't do that, and Newcastle United obviously got the win. Now, Eddie Howe was asked about the Wales side play, and he agreed that they are better as a counter-attacking transitional side. And he said, you can't be something you're not. You need to play to your strengths. But can we be a possession-based team? We can, but we have to improve at it. So clearly he's seeing what everyone else is seeing. He's asking the same questions. He said, and we're debating that as well, about whether we need to be better with the ball at our feet if we are going to be a team who has possession-based football. And look, that's going to happen. It's going to happen over the next few months and years when Newcastle United become an established member of that top four. They're going to be expected to have more of the ball. So that there's no time like the present to get used to it.
Yeah, look, I think yesterday summed up the way Newcastle play quite well, because for the majority of the match, they were going forward with plenty of possession. They were trying to really get behind Forest's deep line, but then also we saw them counter-attack twice, 2 or 3 times in the second half with real precision, real incisive finishing. So they've got both in their locker. Now, one of the hardest things in football, and I stand by this, is a team who's trying to unlock a really low block defence. I mean, I go back to that game that Man City played against Arsenal this season when Trossard got sent off, and Man City could have been there all afternoon, one of the best attacking teams in the world, and they would not have scored. Obviously, they did at the end through a set piece. So it is tough, but Newcastle definitely need to get better over it. I've already pointed out a couple of examples this season where they really struggled because the opposition was sat so deep. But they'll get better, and that'll come with having better players, and that'll definitely come with having a better right winger who can unlock those defences. But But I don't think it's anything to worry about.
No, it's nothing to worry about. It's just
at present.
It's a natural progression, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you're right. It comes with having better players. Tonali's excellent on the ball, but they haven't bought anyone else who improves Newcastle's retention of the ball, who's comfortable passing it. I mean, it's going to be interesting when they go to replace Fabian Schär, who's a great passer of the ball. Whoever comes in has to be equally as comfortable on the ball. And then you're also looking at the left side centre-back going forward in the next couple of years. So there's lots of work to be done, and you'll be able to tell the direction of Newcastle United and their approach to games by the players they bring in. Because if they're bringing in players in, especially defensively, who are comfortable playing out the back, the goalkeeper, that's going to be a big telltale sign who replaces Nick Pope in the long term. If they go out and bring someone in like Edison who can play with the ball at his feet, then you know exactly what's happening.
Which I think they will. I think the centre-back that replaces Dan Burn will be ball playing. I think the Fabian Schär replacement will be someone who's confident with the ball at his feet. And I wrote about this the other week. I don't think it's any surprise that James Trafford's name keeps coming up, because people might not rate him, but as somebody who's came through Manchester City's academy, he's fantastic playing out from the back. And that's what Eddie Howe wants.
I think we'll go back in for him in January.
I really wouldn't be surprised. Now, have they missed a chance on Trafford in the short term, or are they going to have to pay a premium? Maybe, because Burnley had this real fire sale in the summer where they got rid of half their team, and Scott Parker pretty much ripped up the rule book. James Trafford has played consistently for Burnley, so to get him in January is going to be hard. Maybe in the summer, it depends if they come up. But I think it's not an exciting signing for a lot of fans, but I think actually for the way Eddie Howe wants to play, I think I can see why he wants him.
I trust the manager. And we talk about Mark Gay quite often, but Palace are having an absolute shocker. Was he playing? Did I see someone say he was playing at centre mid at one point over the weekend? Doesn't look like the best of times down there for him. Is he still on the radar, you reckon?
Yeah, look, I don't see why not. As we keep, I feel like every week we bring it up, but he still hasn't signed that new Palace deal, which means January is potentially the only time they've got to sell him. I mean, it's not looking good for Palace, is it? They're 18th. They've won once in 11 games. Did
you see the claim that apparently, now this is just reportedly, we don't know if this is true, I'm going to mention it. Apparently Palace put something along the lines of £100 million on the head of Glasner when Bayern Munich came.
Yeah, I saw that over the summer, yeah.
Oh dear. Parish not having the best of summers, if indeed that is true, but one to watch there. David says, unless Barnes develops his game, he will have to settle on being a super sub. It's up to him, but I do not think Howe would stand in his way if he spits out his dummy. I don't think that's going to happen, David. We've got someone saying the fact that we have the youngest defensive wide players in Europe and they are so good just shows how set up for the future we are. Niall says Joelinton can cover that right wing until January, as we see Gordon is way better on the left. If Barnes wants to start, he needs to make that right wing his goal. And Niall says, let's put in a cheeky bid of 10 million from Gay and let's see what happens. Craig says, I love Barnes, but I bet he gets sacrificed. Shrew says, I would not go for Trafford at all. Ian says that would be 6 keepers on the books, and he's not wrong there. They have quite a few goalkeepers, but I'm sure they'll try and move someone like Vlachodimos off in January. David says we need a quality sweeper keeper and a rapid right-sided centre-back to complement Botman. Ian says he's a higher scorer. Talking about Barnes, why on earth would you sell him? And Craig says I can see Tonali going back to Milan. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen.
Keep seeing that in loads of Italian media trying to push that.
But
loads of Italian fans.
We've been in this job long enough, Aaron, to know that the Italian media are often quite, how shall we say, free with their reporting. I think Tonali's here for the foreseeable. Now we're talking about January and what Newcastle United need. We've talked about Mbeumo, Semenyo. I tell you one player that I would love them to sign is Matheus Cunha. I mean, he scored a fantastic goal over the weekend, and listeners of the podcast will know he did. I've mentioned him before. It's not just because he scored a worldie. I just think he's a tremendous player. And if you look at this season in a struggling Wolves side, he scored 5 goals. But you look at where he's played. Attacking midfielder, he's played 3 times. A second striker 3 times. A left midfielder twice. A centre forward twice. And a right midfielder once. I mean, Eddie Howe likes players who can play, in many positions. Right there, he's played 5 positions so far this season. He's scored in 3 of those positions. He's a tremendous player. Look, he costs him, I think, the best part of 40 million. He wouldn't be cheap, but given where Wolves are in the league, battling against relegation, you could probably turn his head, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was always a little bit of a shock that Wolves, and this is no disrespect to them, but they managed to get him away from La Liga. I know, as you say, they spent a lot of money on him. He looks very, very good, very strong, very physical, but also a real turn of pace on him. Did you say he scored 5 goals this season in the league?
5 goals in the league.
Of Wolves' 7.
There you go.
Going to cost a pretty penny to get him away from there then if he's scoring 80% of the goals. But yeah, fantastic player, really good player.
Yeah, tremendous player. Let us know in the comments what you think about that. Just a quick look at the league table and go on.
Hang on, sorry, you sorry to interrupt, but you said one player that I really hope to sign, and I can't believe we've got 59 minutes and 52 seconds, and Liam Delap's name hasn't been brought up. Are you feeling okay?
As I said at the start of the episode, I'm not one to shout about things that I get correct. But how many goals is that from now? 6?
I haven't been paying attention.
Just unlike
the Liam
Delap in Premier League top scorers. I'll do it for you.
club.
I'm happy to do it. Premier League top scorers. We'll just have a little bit of a look.
Anybody who was a member of the Miguel Almiron fan club, if you want to swap your membership because it's turned into the Liam Delap fan club.
I think we scored against Tottenham. Yeah, he's got 6 goals this season for Ipswich. He's doing exactly what I thought he would do. And don't worry, everyone. I've screenshotted your tweets to me when I said that, and they'll be coming out at the end of the season when he said double figures.
You think he's joking, but he generally will have screenshotted those tweets.
Yeah. So. I'm a vindictive young man, I am. Right, there's league table before you have the trivia, which is slightly different this week. It is so tight. Newcastle 8th, 18 points. Villa below them, 18 points. Tottenham 16, Brentford 16, Bournemouth 15, Man United 15. And then above Newcastle, Fulham on 18, Brighton on 19, Forest at 5th, 19. And then the 3 teams above there, two teams above them, sorry, Arsenal, Chelsea on 19. So I can't remember a Premier League season like this.
Yeah, and as I said earlier in the show, Eddie Howe keeps making that point that he's pretty much can't remember a season like this. It is going to be so tight at the top, at the bottom. And it goes back to Newcastle's boost, Newcastle's benefit that they're only in 3 competitions. 2 at the minute, so yeah, they really need to make that count.
And Niall says we need to look away from the Premier League to get bang for our buck, as we don't have the spending power of the cartel. Truel says Premier League players cost an arm and a leg, so Europe or South America is the way to go. David says I would go 45 million from Gay, but have a nailed-on replacement lined up if they play silly so-and-sos. I feel sure Mitchell is lining up a Gay alternative right now. I'm just joining the dots. And one just says I hope Manchester United are not starting a late start now. Usually flipping do. But yeah, such a congested league table. And Villa as well, now finding out that potentially it's not as easy as they all thought, playing Champions League football and trying to maintain a good run of form in the league.
Yeah, I did think that was going to be the case from the start of the season, but I must admit I did have West Ham down as my dark horses, so what do I know? They're really struggling. I mean, Newcastle could not be playing them at a better time if they keep Lopetegui for the next 2 weeks.
I'm surprised Lopetegui is failed as badly as he has done.
I've got a certain West Ham United fan who we follow each other on Twitter, and he is absolutely vitriolic about Lopetegui. He says he can't think of one thing that Lopetegui has improved since the summer. He says the style of play, he says the players are going backwards, he says the results are terrible. I mean, they're 14th in the league, they've got 12 points, they've won 3 of their 11 games, -6 goal difference.
Will he be in charge come 25th of November?
I hope so.
Oh, well, Jared Bowen, if you want to come to Newcastle, you'll be more than welcome, my son.
Get the photos of the bridges out.
But yeah, I did also remind our Aston Villa counterpart about a prediction that I made on a podcast. He invited me on before the season kicked off. He wanted me to tell them about the experience of the Champions League, and I said to him, mate, I said not to him, I said to his audience that you're going to find it very difficult to balance the form. And I got so much abuse. Well, not to rain on your parade, but they're a place behind Newcastle, but they've got the exact same amount of wins, the same amount of draws, and the same amount of defeats. And they're only behind Newcastle on goal difference. So they're not doing that bad. Not doing that bad, but maybe below from what they thought they would.
No,
There's 4 defeats on the
they're only a point off. No, they
in all competitions, maybe.
They're 1 win in 5 in the Premier League. But they're only a point off it. So.
but it goes to show again, Newcastle have got to take advantage of these teams.
Yeah, of course.
These competitions, haven't they? Go on then. You want to do the trivia? You had something up your sleeve?
Yeah, well, if anybody like me is permanently on TikTok, because I will hold my hands up and say I'm Slightly worrying how
You
much I use
youngsters.
TikTok. You'll have seen this, and it's a new game called Winner Stays On.
Oh, yeah.
The Newcastle United midfield edition. So I've got about 20 midfield names from Newcastle here, and all I want you to do is, in your opinion, the better player stays on.
The better player.
The
So not
better
who I
player.
like.
So
but
not
the
your
better player,
favourite,
okay.
the better Newcastle United player. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to start with Kieran Dyer. He's the starting point. As I've said, this is a midfield edition. So we're going to go Kieran Dyer up against Jermaine Genius.
Dyer.
Kieran Dyer on Nicky Butt.
When they were at Newcastle.
Well, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it at Newcastle,
I
or do you
think
want to do
that-
their career?
I think do it Newcastle
Okay.
because
Well, that'll
Nicky
change the
Butt-
answers to some. But okay, we'll go Dyer or Butt. at
But you know,
Newcastle.
Nicky Butt wasn't that bad at Newcastle. Actually,
He wasn't. He
Captain,
gets slander for his time at Newcastle.
He was a good
He deserves
addition.
it.
But Dyer, yeah, just more entertaining.
Kieran Dyer or Jonas Gutierrez.
Oh, better though, isn't it? It's better quality. Oh, Dyer,
Kieran Dyer or Damien Duff.
Duff,
Damien Duff or Kevin Nolan.
better quality. I mean, in terms of ability, Duff, you saw what he did at Chelsea. In terms of at Newcastle, Nolan.
I think Nolan's. If I talked about Newcastle,
Yeah.
Nolan's a better
I think
answer.
we'll get some blurred lines here, aren't we?
Yeah. Kevin Nolan or Joey Barton.
But Kevin Nolan.
Kevin Nolan or Scott Parker.
Ooh, I'm a Harrick at the time we had Derby. It's got to be Kevin Nolan, right?
Kevin Nolan or Czech Tiote, God rest his soul.
Oh, see, that's really difficult because they're two totally different players. I mean, Tiote was top of his game, wasn't he? Tiote.
Czech Tiote or Hatton Ben Arfa.
Oh.
Again, two very different players.
Two different players, but Tiote definitely reached the top of his game in Newcastle United. Like, imagine him
And
in
you feel like there was maybe a bit of missed potential with Ben Arfa.
more than a bit of missed potential. I mean, Tiote would fit into like a Man City team in today's big game. Yeah, Tiote.
Yeah. Czech Tiote, again, very different. Czech Tiote or David Ginola.
You see, right, it's difficult because David Ginola is looked back on so fondly, lovely bloke.
But
if
you're not convinced by Ginola's time at Newcastle, are you?
No, it's just because you look at the stats. Like I think he's closer to Hatton Ben Arfa than he is Anthony Gordon. If you get in terms of
The
achievement,
stats.
because I think he only scored 5 goals and like obviously wonderful cross of the ball. Just he was brilliant to watch. But in terms of actual achievements when it comes to goals and stats, it's a different story. It depends what you're judging it on. Tiote or Ginola, I mean.
Sounds like you're leaning towards Tiote there.
I am a little bit, but then I don't know how many more people I've got to go.
Well, you've still got. We've got about 10 left.
All right, I'll go Tiote then.
Okay, Czech Tiote or Johan Cabaye.
Cabaye.
Johan Cabaye or John Joe Shelby.
Cabaye.
Johan Cabaye or Gini Wijnaldum.
Oh, again, it's all about. But then he had a stellar season at Newcastle. Ooh, Wijnaldum.
Thought you'd go Cabaye. Gini Wijnaldum or Joelinton.
Big Joe.
Joelinton or Rob Lee.
Rob Lee.
Rob Lee or Nobby Solano.
Oh, come on. You need to keep it within positional sense, right?
It's got to get harder. It's got to get harder.
Let me know in the comments, Rob Lee or Nobby Solano, because you see, them two would be within a shout of the best Newcastle 11 I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, we've still got cut and walk after this. So.
Rob Lee was good. But then the end of Rob Lee's time, he didn't really score. I think he went something like 2 years without scoring a goal. Nobby Solano.
Nobby Solano or Laurent Robert.
Nobby.
Nobby Solano or Sandro Tonali.
Nobby.
Nobby Solano or Bruno Guimarães.
Oh, hello. Ding dong. That's a battle and a half in it. Because again, if you're naming the best 11 you've ever seen, both of them would be within a shout. Oh, see, we've blurred the lines here because of his ability. But then Solano, one of the best crosses the Premier League's ever seen.
Got to push it.
Solano.
There you go. Nobby Solano, the winner.
I'll let him know that. Give you well chuffed for that, I'm sure. Let us know in the comments what you thought about that. We might actually do it as a TikTok as well. I mean, we won't get the same players, I don't think, but we'll do it as a TikTok. There's plenty of those on TikTok. You can follow us on Chronicle NUFC. And look, we've got loads of people with different comments as we suspected with that, but that was very good, very creative. Yeah. When you said it's not 20 questions, a little bit different, I got a little bit worried. I was, but that was absolutely sublime.
Well, next week we'll do attackers.
Yes, well, I can do it next week. And we've got a belter Monday show lined up next week. We don't know if we're going to do it live or not because it's a little bit different. But we're both going to.
We've been waiting to do this
We have.
for ages, haven't we? So
you might remember 2 international windows ago, we picked the start 11 each of the players who had been rumoured to join Newcastle. This time around, we're going to do players who we wish had stayed longer, start 11 each, give our reasons, and then we want you guys to tell us which is the better side. We'll decide in the week whether we do it live or not, because there'll be plenty of research having to go into it, but look out for that next Monday. Also, over my shoulder, that shoulder, this shoulder, you can see these wonderful canvases behind me, kindly donated to the ever-growing studio by Sporty Canvases. Great addition to the studio. That side, there we go. So have a little look at them. Thank you for those. Thank you to you guys for watching. It is much appreciated. And thank you to NORD VPN for sponsoring the podcast. Like I say, all the details in the podcast description box. Do click on that and secure yourself against the hackers and the scammers out there. You support the podcast and you keep yourselves nice and safe for a minimal cost. What's not to love? Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys very soon.